Welcome to 30 Years, 30 Voices, an oral history of Richardson, Texas. This project builds on the oral histories taped in Richardson during 1985 and 2005. It includes the program 20 Years, 20 Voices, which featured videotaped interviews with 24 civic leaders. This tradition also celebrates the heritage of community building through Leadership Richardson, a program of the Richardson Chamber of Commerce. 30 Years, 30 Voices was developed by the Leadership Richardson Alumni Association in cooperation with AIR, the Arts Incubator of Richardson, the City of Richardson, the Richardson Public Library, and the University of Texas at Dallas.
I think you really truly don't know where you're going until you really understand where you've been. And I think so many of the problems we face now have their roots in historical phenomena. And looking at those things and looking at the people who dealt with those problems, their skill sets, the way they handle themselves, their leadership qualities is amazing.
Well, Richardson was really a small, separate city. A good bit of empty space between it and the outskirts of Dallas.
So was the TI facility then kind of surrounded by farms?
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of a standalone island?
Yeah.
Arapahoe Road didn't go through past, I think it was Preston. And the other thing I remember about the area was the traffic circle on Beltline. I think I might describe Richardson as just a nice little town.
Well, back when I went to work, about anything a citizen needed, they called the fire department. Whether it's help on finding lost dogs or whatever, we done a little bit of everything back in those days.
I remember working the high school football games as a rookie patrolman. We did security at the Friday night football games. And the director that would command those at halftime would walk over to the squad car and he would call dispatch and he would give them the halftime scores. And I finally said, "Why are you doing that?" And he said, "Because people call in to dispatch and they want to know what the score is." And you know, we were a 24-hour resource, and people would call the police department and want to know what the score was. And it was just common knowledge at the time of those people. And it's that type of relationship that we have with our community, to some extent, still exists today.
I can also remember driving to Gibson's and thinking, what on earth did anybody build this 6-lane road for? There was no traffic much on it at that time, but that was just the foresightedness the city's always had.
When I went to work there at the library, it was the only building there. The rest of it was empty fields. The city was very much a bedroom community at that time, but it was a bedroom community for the people who worked at TI and some of the other places around there, and so they really wanted to have good schools. They were highly educated, wanted good schools for their kids, and they wanted good library resources.
Well, Louise Frederick, the director of the library at the time, she had visions of having a noontime brown bag lunch where people would come and listen to authors. Frank and I attended a number of lecture series around Dallas, and we would see Richardson people. And once the City Hall was built, where we had a nice facility in which to hold something such, we decided to begin that.
The difference between the Friends of the Library in-person lecture series here and some of the similar kinds of series that we'd attended down in Dallas was a somewhat of a more audience participation experience. And this truly was a stimulating series of lectures, and I think it just grew on itself and became a pretty darn good ticket.
We were looking to do something that would showcase all of the helping agencies. This came out of Leadership Richardson. Oh. And I had a committee, and they were wonderful. I could have never done it myself. And that's how Helping Agencies Serving Richardson came about. It's 35, I believe, agencies. They meet all of the time. They all know one another. They can refer to one another. It's wonderful. It really did work.
That's the way I saw Network. It's supported by individuals, businesses, and the religious groups. And it takes all three to keep Network going, to make Network work. You can't take one aspect out and still have it function. It takes all of us.
I think one unique feature and also the strength is the diversity of this community currently. Richardson has gone through a big change, I think, in the population makeup, in the sense that there has been a big influx of Asians and now people from all over the world into this community. And I think that is a strength where it opens this community really to the world. It's no longer just a suburb of Dallas.
We are here, Muslims, happen to be born in Turkey myself, Brother Suleiman in Pakistan, our members in our congregation from all over the world.
35 different nationalities.
Different ethnicities, different nationalities. 35. I saw America, Richardson, specifically because my world is Richardson, because I came here 17 years ago, I live there, so we are here, this is our land, this is our home. We are here, Americans.
Just driving down the street in Richardson, if you look at all the churches, if you look at all the businesses, the languages of the signs, to me, reflect exactly the change in our community. We've become a place where immigrants and refugees feel comfortable, a place where foreign countries sometimes send their employees, which kind of makes the little sleepy town into quite a cosmopolitan area, I think.
Let me point out, it was community leadership. Some people who really cared about this community, that wanted to see a better Richardson, and they knew that along with the city government having a strong city council and city management, you needed a good healthcare system, a good school system. You know, I get asked about the schools from a lot of people that interview here, and they say, you know, what private school do you send your kids to? And I tell them that you don't understand. The public system is the best. That's where you will want your kids to go to school.
Much to my surprise, she said, "You will live in Richardson." And I said, "Well, that's fine, but why not Plano?" And she said, "Well, because we've got a good school district and it will be better and it will equal Richardson someday, but you've got a 2-year-old and Richardson's is better now and will be better in the beginning." So using that as the only reason we moved here.
I've always had good working relationships with mayors and city managers across the northern and eastern part of the country. I just have never run into a circumstance as good as this one. The city government here, in terms of their understanding of the important role of education plays in economic development, is unprecedented.
We leveraged that and recognized early that tech companies needed to be viewed as citizens of the community just as the people who live here. And so we spent a lot of time setting with the leadership of those organizations. And one of the things that came out loud and clear is that anybody had, where organizations had been successful, there was a university that was important to where they were. And there was a community, a sense of community where after work the employees could do things.
The economic development plan that developed between the city and the chamber and et cetera was very smart, because it was basically aimed at encouraging high-tech companies to locate here. And the idea is not just to have good jobs, but it's to basically have companies who have equipment that increases the tax base of the city. And that works to everyone's advantage in the area, because it does provide a way for the city to support itself and to have more funds for development, for streets, for infrastructure, and so on.
It was a city that had been by and large developed by people who had come out of the tech industry, who put their signature, so to speak, on all of the rules and regulations. So you had a city that had developed quite well, and that kind of environment was attractive to business and industry from across the Metroplex.
The library, the rec centers, all of those things are just, the people in this community want them, they know what they're for, they appreciate them, and as long as you're leading them in that direction and taking care of those things, they work with you and help it happen. And help it happen is Richardson, Texas.
One of the things that I noticed and was delighted in with the city of Richardson was that the Chamber of Commerce, the City Council, the Public School Board, all these folks worked well together, the city staff, and Richland College was there. And so I saw this wonderful partnership between key players.
I think our council, and this has been a spirit of Richardson, and I think it's one of the reasons why it has not only been a great place to work, but I think it's one reason why we have the positive impressions that the Dallas-Fort Worth area has about Richardson, is we are involved in regional initiatives, and we see the world much bigger than just ourselves. But I think our leadership, I've always referred to them as statesmen rather than politicians, because I think they truly are interested in making the Metroplex a better place for everybody to live.
One of the things that's been so fascinating about Richardson is somehow, no matter how small or how big, we've always been able to maintain that environment of family and of community, and this is just the best place to be. And we all believe that.
And I'd have people say to me, well, are you going to stay in Richardson? Richardson is my place. You know, I feel like that people want to go somewhere when they retire, and they want to go this community and that community. We have a wonderful community right here, and I can't imagine going any place that I would be any more content than I am right here.
During 2006 and 2015, the Leadership Richardson Alumni Association added 10 interviews.
Richardson's all about people. Home, you know, I've traveled to some very hostile places in the world, places where in the winter it's 40 below, the wind blows 40 miles an hour, wind chill is minus 110, skin freezes in 30 seconds, and people love it. Now, why do those people love it? They love it for the same reason that we love Richardson. It's the people, it's your neighbors, it's your friends, it's home.
Richardson is more and more becoming an urban environment, but it still has all of the bells and whistles and mechanisms that give you that small town feel.
So it's hard to believe that Richardson is the home to huge corporations, the telecom corridor, so many activities from the arts to education, etc., because it has that front porch feel, that down-home feeling to it that makes it inviting.
I wrote a little article 6 months ago for the Morning News about what makes Richardson special. And, you know, on a per capita basis, and I'm speculating, but I suspect that Richardson has a higher per capita volunteer ratio than any city in North Texas. And it's because of our size, number one. But number two, it's such an active community. I mean, there's so much going on all the time. And if you think you're doing a lot, there's 20 people ahead of you that are doing twice as much.
So the first thing I wanted to do was serve on the Arts Commission. And so I let the person who was the chair of the Arts Commission at that time, I kept telling her, I said, you know, I really want to do this. And it just so happened she was in my Leadership Richardson class. And she kept going, you have to get in line. And so I would go, okay.
You have to wait your
and
turn.
then every time I saw somebody rotate off, I'd go, you know, I still really want to do this. And I've sent my application in.
It's where you realize what your heart is all about. when you take care of someone else, and we're doing it daily over there. We see approximately 500 to 700 people a week, and primarily for food, and they are just being treated with the highest dignity and love. It's truly neighbors caring for neighbors over there at Network.
I've been, as I mentioned earlier, quite a few places around the country, and I've never seen a city be more responsive, not only to us as a healthcare entity, but to the entire community. It's truly a city that wants to be an active, growing part to make the city as successful as possible.
I think the relationship between UT Dallas and the city of Richardson is rather unique. I read a lot about friction between cities and universities, and a lot of that friction is overtaxing actually in revenue. The thinking in the city of Richardson is just above that. It's not down in trivia, it's bigger thinking, it's bigger ideas, it's a bigger vision, and never once have I heard anybody sort of get down into the weeds and these smaller issues. We've always talked about the bigger issues and the bigger plans and the bigger collaborations.
You know, Richardson also is very well known for planning their work and working their plan. And, you know, our success is not accidental. Our success is very intentional. And, you know, we had these visionary leaders who came long before me who put in place opportunities that I'm reaping the benefit of. I really believe that part of my role is to tee it up for the person who's going to be sitting in this seat 30 years from now. And as I look down the road, I see things that we can't even imagine yet. I see, obviously, technology is going to continue to be our primary focus, but I see some probably very interesting new companies that are technology-based, global companies, that will be started here in Richardson, Texas.
I think we're becoming a very hip suburban urban area. And you look at things like Alamo Draft House, you know, as kind of a sign of that, or the new food truck park that I've heard, you know, being developed. We have our own brewery now, you know, Four Bullets Brewery. You know, it's kind of a cool thing to have. Next thing up is a distillery.
And there are things that are coming down the pike that none of us know what they're going to be, but I bet you the Eisman Center can make it fit. And that's what's cool. That's what's cool. It's constant discovery. It's constant, wow, I didn't know you could do that. Well, we did. And part of the reason we can do it is because I'm very fortunate. The city has allowed me to assemble an unbelievably strong professional team.
The city staff, from department to department, lean on each other, and they're really seen as a team. I've witnessed this for 3 decades of how the city comes together from a staff point of view to make something like Wildflower be produced. But it doesn't stop there. It's not just staff. It's the city manager's office, it's the city council, it's the different commissions, it's Leadership Richardson, Alumni Association. Everyone's leaning into whatever is good for the community.
There is a can-do spirit here that's the only way I know how to describe it, that everybody seems to have.
Again, I think, you know, Richardson's best days are ahead from my perspective. I really think that we'll look back at this decade between, you know, 2010, 2020 and call this one of the best times in Richardson's history.
What Richardson has, and it's very attractive to me and I think to a lot of people, is a vision for the future. Things like the center, things like DART, things like the High Five, which were supported. All of these things are very, very important and will take Richardson into the next stage of reinvention, wherever that is. I'm not sure where that is, but it's out there somewhere and will happen, you know, in a few years.
Leadership Richardson has truly been making a difference for 30 years, and I think you now see the impact that this program has had on our community. I am so honored and privileged to have been a product of Leadership Richardson, and all I know is I can't wait to see what the next 30 years brings.